Jin.
Ooh.
Jin.
Enough.
You know, I used to think it was Jean. Then again, it took me a long time to accept that Sun Quan wasn't Sun Quan.
My name is Sun Quan.
Yeah, good times. Anyway, welcome back to the channel. We are on everyone's least favorite kingdom, which is going to be the Kingdom of Jin. I also used to call Eugene. Anyway, let's talk about Jin today and mully over the question of, is Jin necessary, right? So we've done Wei, we've done Wu, we've done Shu. They all have their little tidbits of things that make them an interesting kingdom. Now we're talking about Jin, and are they necessary? Having their roots with Sima Yi, who served Wei during Cao Cao's time. After the ruler's death, as you guys know, he offered his services to Cao Pi, Cao Rui, and his family's reputation had begun to grow exponentially, especially when he ended up dealing with the Wu army invasion, Zhuge Liang's northern campaigns, and Gun Sun Yuan's revolt. And eventually, Sima Yi would go on to combine the forces of his own supporters and that of his sons, Sima Shi and Sima Zhao, to eventually lead a coup d'etat on Cao Shuang, who was corruptly destroying the kingdom that Sima Yi worked so hard to build up, initiating the beginning of, I guess, the Jin kingdom. And that's who we're talking about today. So we have the fourth kingdom of the three kingdoms, and they definitely brought some colorful characters with them. But are they necessary? Yes. Well, kind of. It's kind of a yes and a no. Like they help, but it's not like super necessary, but it's nice to have them. Like, I appreciate them, but it wasn't necessary, but I do understand. Anyway, so the reason I say yes is because without the Jin Kingdom in the game, Wei would have bloated up their roster. I mean, with pretty much all of them not even being around when Jin started, they would all fall under Wei, technically. Some of them are pretty interesting choices to add to Jin, like Guo Huai or Deng Ai. But then again, that's the story for most of them, as again, most of them, I would say, are Wei followers. And not too many of them make it into the actual Jin Kingdom era. Now, I guess looking from an outside perspective, you could say that they are the regime of characters after Cao Wei died, and it was kind of Sima Yi running the show, which, you know, makes sense. I don't mind that. However, if Jin wasn't included, one, the games would be totally different, but two, if they did include them in Wei, Koei Tecmo would have to find a way to expand Shu and Wu as well so they could have like equal rosters. So instead of adding the 12 or the 13 extra characters for Shu and Wu, which they could do, I mean, there's plenty of people to do, they just decided to make the kingdom separate, making it easier on them to develop them without the worry of adding like 30 new characters at once. But then again, if you look at Dynasty Warriors 7, look at this. They added over 20 new, quote-unquote, new characters, because some of them were obviously removed and brought back, not including 7XL as well. What, like 3 or 4 more characters got added as well, so you got like almost 25 new characters, which means if they wanted to, they could have added 5 to Wei from Jin, who were the most important, you know, Sima Shi, Sima Zhao. I would put Wang Duanji, Deng Ai, and Guo Huai probably as my 5 for adding, and then they could have added 4 or 5 to Shu and Wu. I mean, there's plenty of options to choose from. If you look at the roster, they added 6 characters in total to Shu. I mean, Shu was the bloated roster in Dynasty Warriors 7 until, again, Dynasty Warriors 7 Extreme Legends, where they added a few new characters, especially on the Wei side. You know, Wang Yi, Peng De came back. I think Guo Jie got added in there too, right? So, I mean, they had a good boost to their roster in 7 Extreme Legends, and it's totally fine to me. Necessary? Probably not, but it makes sense. And looking at their roster that they currently have, they have 13 playable characters in the Jin roster right now, and I would say they're decently alright. Putting my subjective views on some of the characters aside, I think most of them are pretty well iterated except for Guo Huai. Guo Huai is really the only character that I have a major problem with, because I think he should be on a similar level of Deng Ai. I think Deng Ai is a great iteration in the game, represents him well, really encapsulates the character, and then you have Guo Huai, who I would say is on Deng Ai's equal. They, you know, they're friends, and Guo Huai was on the same military level as Deng Ai, yet he's the sickly guy who can barely hold his weapon up, which I don't think is the best iteration for Guo Huai. So compared to the other 3 kingdoms, of course they have a smaller roster, but their standout characters aren't that standout-ish. Like, the Sima family's great, Jia Chong's great, I like Wen Yang, even though he's not as memorable as some of the other characters. Shang Chunwang has her moments, except she goes down in Dynasty Warriors 9. And then you have the 3 traders with Zhang Hui, Zhuge Dan, and Xiahou Ba. For me, all 3 of them are average, and they play a very small and not really significant role at all. Xiahou Ba also being dubbed to be so young in the games is kind of weird, you know. I mean, if he's short, he's short, I get it, but my guy is like 15 on the battlefield when he's supposed to be like 50. If they want to introduce him a little earlier and he looks like that and grows into it, that'd be great. Maybe they do that. But his iteration was just a little weird. Zhang Hui and Zhuge Dan just aren't characters that I really necessarily vibe with. I don't know if there's many out there who also vibe with them as well. I mean, if you like Zhang Hui and his flying swords, I totally get that. But yeah, the Sima clan, Jia Chong, and Wang Yuanji is probably the shining stars for this, and that's only 5 characters. And with Wei, Wu, and Shu, they have at least, I would say, a dozen characters for each roster that's like solid characters, well established, well liked, whatever it may be. And with Jin, they're falling kind of flat. With Qin Changying coming in the latest iteration, again, she's falling very, very flat for me, and I'm assuming for most of the fan base as well, because she doesn't really play much of a role. Like, what is she there for? What is the addition that she's given to Jin? What's the value that she's given to Jin? I don't really see it. And honestly, out of all the characters, she should have been a Wei character more than anybody else. But, you know, Jin, I think, has a great start with their roster. I just think they are also missing a lot of counterparts in the later parts as well. Like, Wu has nobody in the later parts that are really quote-unquote rivals with Jin. I mean, you got Zhuge Dan going to Wu, so he becomes the rival, but, you know, Ding Fang, Lu Xun, Zhu Ran, there's no like interpersonal rivalries with them or anyone from Jin. Obviously, everyone from Jin has a problem with Zheng Wei.
Did you see that? Benevolence!
But that's pretty much it. Maybe Ma Dai, maybe the Guans, you know, Guan Su, Guan Xing, but there's not many like interpersonal relationships with the Jin Kingdom characters and the later parts of Shu, Wu, or even quote-unquote Wei in itself. You know, Jin, you know, they have a good start. You know, they got decent characters. I just think a lot of them need to be developed. They need some rivalries. They need some spice. You know, and you gotta add some seasoning to the chicken because it's just very bland right now. A lot of the characters have their interpersonal relationships. You know, Deng Ai has that favor and fondness towards Zheng Hui. Zheng Hui doesn't like him, and you know they have that falling out because of the rebellion, and then obviously the way Zheng Hui gets Deng Ai killed in the book and history and all that stuff, which is crazy. Zhuge Dan betraying Sima Zhao after idolizing Shi. I mean, they have some great points to go off of within their own like little kingdom, but outside of that, it seems that they're having a hard time connecting to other characters besides like the main adversaries like Zheng Wei and everybody already mentioned. Overall, I like Jin. I think most of their characters are decent. I would also have to say they're probably my least favorite of the 4 kingdoms, just because we spent so much time with the first 3. We love them, all that good stuff. But Jin has some really good characters, so I don't mind them staying or being added as a 4th kingdom to add, you know, different perspectives and angles from this time period. And it just makes sense. I mean, after Cao Cao dies and then, you know, Cao Pi dies pretty quickly after that, it's pretty much the Sima show. So it makes sense that his quote-unquote faction, since he was posthumously given the title of, you know, first emperor of Jin and all that stuff, that the games would have people under his regime, under his command, being part of the Jin kingdom. So overall, the big old summary, I would say it isn't necessarily necessary, see what I did there, to add Jin into the story, but I don't mind them as part of the game whatsoever. I think they're great, and that's pretty much it. Thank you. The Kingdom of Jin. I wonder if they all wore jeans that time. What would they look like? Imagine Sima Yi in jeans with a fan. I don't know why, but I feel like he would have a country accent. And then you got Eugene. He's gonna need scruffier hair though. Also, if you guys want to see some of my original thoughts on some of these characters, check out the links in the description for some of these characters and their analysis.